Welcome to the Opinionated Benchwarmers Podcast, episode 175. Your Opinionated Benchwarmers are back to do what we do best, and that's discuss sports. Fellas, NFL has revved up. We just come off a Monday night game. It's an exciting time right now. We're watching all the good sports. Man, how y'all feeling?
Feeling good, man. As always, 2 weeks of football and passed since we last recorded. So it's good to talk sports, man, to talk football. It's officially here, man. We officially got a couple games on our belt. We kind of see what's what. So I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to be here. I'm ready to rock 175.
Yeah, same here, man. It's always a good time when you get football season rolling. That combination of college and NFL, as Lowe said, I think on last week, told us Merry Christmas to open up the day. So it's always a good time for sports fans. When this time of season, this time of year rolls around, it always gives you something that you can be focused in on. And so, especially with the way that the season opened, when you had the Thursday, then the Friday game, then you had the Saturday college football back to Sunday, and so it's just been all a real good time, and I'm not gonna hold it any longer, man. Let's just jump into it.
Absolutely. As I always like to say, thank you for all the love and support. We realize there are so many great podcasts out there, but you decide to take out time and listen to us. We appreciate that. Make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast on wherever you like to listen to your podcast at. And we are actually on YouTube as well. So if you want to see the visual and our beautiful faces, then check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, get notified, hit the bell on the bottom of the video so you can get notified when that content comes out. Fellas, we're going to jump into it. We started off last episode that we recorded talking about LSU. I'm gonna jump into it really quickly, then we'll move on to some other good stuff. Obviously, coming off of a disappointing win, if that even exists, against the South Carolina Gamecocks on game day, prime time noon game on Saturday. It was really disappointing to see the game and how it panned out. I just wanted to, as we all have went to LSU, just wanted to get everybody's thoughts on the state of the team here. The only bright spot seems like was Cade Durham, who rushed 11 times for 98 yards, and obviously Aaron Anderson, who caught 5 passes for 96 yards. But it wasn't much else to brag about. At this state, I don't know what to say when the first play of the game, with supposedly supposed to be our best defensive player, missed the tackle, giving up 17 yards, and I just knew right then that we weren't ready to play, guys. We looking at a 2-1 team. We got UCLA. We're set at 24-point favorites, home favorites, coming up this Saturday. Then we have South Alabama after that, which are two tune-up games. Are y'all feeling good about this team?
I don't know. I'll just say myself, I am just feeling like we're gonna just see continue and to see a inconsistent team, right? And I think, from the defensive side is just getting we see teams like Nichols have a field day and do what they want against LSU, and obviously a more of a SEC team in South Carolina come in, do what they want and run through us. It's like when you get deeper into those SEC ranked teams, I don't know, I don't have the confidence that this team could compete, right? I feel like there may be some games in there where we get embarrassed. We're so used to the offense carrying the defense the last few years. Right now, the offense is inconsistent, right? And I know Nussmeier is getting his feet under him and learning the game, but I think there's a lot of meat left on the bone with him when it comes to his decision making, when it comes to his timing, it comes to a lot of stuff. So I don't know. It's a lot to be told. I think he played well against Nichols, but I think his inconsistency showed up in this last South Carolina game, and it was just kind of I don't know. I don't know. It kind of raised some eyebrows for me. So we'll see how things go. But again, we got a lot to work on defensively and offensively.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, or the biggest surprise actually coming into this season for me, has been the offensive line. I think that we came into this season, we knew that the defense, our goal was to take a step forward. And I honestly, as bad as it looks with a couple different plays with bad run fits, I think that honestly, this defense has been improved from last season. Now, that's not saying a lot because it was terrible, obviously, under Matt House. But I do think that even when you look at the second half of that game, I mean, the defense had several times where they, held them to 3 and outs. They had a couple of turnovers, some big time sacks. Braden Swinson was the SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week So I think that you've seen bright spots from the defense because you see a more aggressive defense. You just see a defense that does, of course, happen to be in the wrong position to give up big time coverage bust at times, which is not good. And also, like I said, the run fits. But the biggest thing to me, like I said, that's been a shocker for this team has been the offensive line. You know, you have an offensive line that can't consistently run block well. You know, you did mention Caden Durham as the freshman to show some life in the running game. But to me, they haven't been consistent from an O-line standpoint with that. And then you really saw Will Campbell maybe play the worst game of his college career so far in the way that he looked against South Carolina. Now, what I will state is that South Carolina is not the pushover that everybody thinks that they are. This South Carolina team is a team that really embarrassed the Kentucky team that took Georgia to the wire this past weekend. This is a South Carolina team that likely has a top three, if not best, defensive line in the SEC.
You can see it.
Yes.
You
And
definitely
so
can see it.
right. And so while this South Carolina team, I'm not trying to hype them up to make LSU look any better than what they are. I do feel like LSU is a middle of the road team right now. But in saying that, you went into a hostile environment, you shot yourself in the foot early, you were down 17-0, but you were able to, get out there still with the win. And there's a lot that they can learn from that, but at least they can learn a lot from it with having a win in their back pocket rather than having another loss.
Noon games are tricky, and I think that we saw a team that wasn't prepared to play, and I lean that on coaching as well. You saw a lot of missed tackles. You saw a lot of guys. I mean, Harold Perkins. I don't know what's going on with him. I mean, I don't know. I think you mentioned Will Campbell, who was a projected first round pick coming into the season, and as well as Harold Perkins. And I just really feel like Harold Perkins was going through the motions out there a lot of times. And our secondary is just hard. Like you mentioned, our defense did hold them to 3 points at times when South Carolina was starting within their own territory, which was really good, and they're showing promise in there, but it's still a lot of work to be done on that secondary. Defensive line play actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was, that people would say it is. So we'll see what's happening and what's going to happen. But Brian Kelly, game by game, I'm losing faith. Just be the lack of accountability, the excuses that are made in press conferences. I don't know. I've heard that Brian Kelly, up in the Midwest, people are not a huge fan of him. So I'm starting to see what they're saying. We'll see what happens, but as we'll see what happens. As I said, we got we got 2 weeks to get ready for Ole Miss. So we'll see. We'll see what happens until then. But we're jumping into it, guys. As you know, the NFL season, as we enter into the third week, we're entering into a time where there's a little panic. We'll start off with fandom, then we'll get to some fun fantasy points and maybe help you out on your waiver wire, even though after you hear this, waivers will be done. But we'll jump into contenders and pretenders. Right now, we got teams that are 0-2 and 2-0. Let's start off with some pretenders here. Let's see some teams that we feel are 2-0, have got off to a good start, and they may not be there at the end of the road. Who is that team for you guys?
Uh, I I hate to kind of do this, because
Oh,
of
I
course,
do my Saints in.
no, no,
You
no,
know.
I'm not about to do your Saints in actually. But I okay, I'm gonna just go ahead and say it with this one. I know that they're off to a 2-0 start, and the reason why I hate to say it is not for you as the Snowden, but for as the new Snowden, her favorite team in the Pittsburgh.
She gonna love this segment.
No, that's why I didn't want to say it. I feel like I'm getting in trouble. For y'all that don't know, Rob's wife Shanae is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and that's when I'm getting at.
I gotta live here. You don't.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm saying it on the pod, so you don't have to say it. But with the Pittsburgh Steelers, the thing that is interesting, some people would probably have a counter argument that, hey, they're playing with their backup, quarterback right now in Justin Fields with Russell Wilson being out. But there's still a team that I still have, question marks about. Obviously they are out to, that 2-0 start. But to me, it hasn't been anything that's been that will shout the rooftops, with what they've accomplished thus far in this season. Beating the Denver Broncos is obviously not to me anything that's very noteworthy. I'm not a big Denver Broncos guy. And then of course I know too that they did have that win against the Falcons, which now looks like a little bit better of a win, obviously, and what the Falcons were able to do in week 2. But you asked me kind of among the 2-0 teams who I think is more so of a pretender, and they would be the team that kind of comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I'll say the Chargers. I think that's an easy one. I think you look at the games that they won this year, right? You start the year off playing the Raiders, right? The Raiders we didn't look at them as a playoff team at all. You beat the Raiders, right? And then obviously last week you beat the Panthers, and we know what's going on over there in Carolina. So again, you look at those 2 wins right now. I would just say I want to hold judgment on them as we go forward. Now they're playing good football. They're running the ball well. Obviously, Dobbins is probably leading in the comeback player of the year award right now on his limited touches. So, I like what they're doing over there, and I think Harbaugh have been playing well. But again, I look at the 2 opponents, the Raiders and the Panthers. I'm not saying Super Bowl for them. I'm not even saying playoffs yet for them. So I'll have them right now as my pretender.
I shockingly go with the Vikings here. I know that they had a big win against the 49ers without Christian McCaffrey. And then you also were without Debo. I do feel like this team is trying to find an identity. I think that JJ McCarthy probably would have been the guy at some point this season. I don't think that Sam Darnold was going to last throughout the season. Now, with that being said, I think Sam Darnold has looked very, very good this season so far. But however, I don't believe that this is sustainable. You have Justin Jefferson that got banged up in that game. You have a guy in Sam Darnold, like I said, that has been a nomad at this point in his career, which he was very highly evaluated and highly acclaimed coming out of college, but has not found a home yet. I don't think it's sustainable, and I do think that Minnesota will struggle going forward. So that's my pretender there. So 2-0. I guess I'll start it off. You see the Florida Lee in the background. You see the Saints helmet. I am all in on the New Orleans Saints. I forgot as a fan, if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that Derek Carr would be leading the league in touchdown passes this season with 5 touchdown passes, I would have called you crazy. But here we are. Obviously, the Saints showing rims. I actually had the privilege of watching this with my brother, Carlo. He was in town to watch it and witness it with me of how explosive this offense is. 9 straight scoring touchdown drives. Alvin Kamara at 28 years old is looking like he's 23 years old. Clint Kubiak got us rolling. I almost forgot what a competent NFL offense looked like.
Man, he got so
Well,
excited he just dropped no. He dropped the
hey,
mic.
for the listeners, Rob just dropped the mic on us. I don't know where he went, but I'll respond to that. I'll say I did watch the podcast, or I'm sorry, not the podcast. I did watch the game this weekend with Rob, and I was not looking forward to this segment. Was not looking forward to this segment at all. Dealing with just knowing how excited he is about these Saints, right? I heard it in person. I knew he had to come on the podcast, and I knew he was going to be so excited and thinking Super Bowl. He was talking about they're going to win over 12 games and this, that, and the other. So I'm just in a place now. I'm just like, they're playing well. You
Yeah,
can't
you
you
can't
can't
knock
knock
it.
them right now. I can't knock them. As much as I want to be a hater, as much as I'm not the hugest Saints fan, as much as I know they have a matchup with the Rams this year, it's like you can't knock them. They're a well-oiled machine, and so I don't know. I'm excited about them.
Yeah, no,
It's him calling right now. Hold on. Go ahead, take it away, Ramon.
yeah, no, I think that, like you said, it's very interesting, in what the Saints are doing right now. I think that leading into week 2, it was that whole conversation of course, they played Carolina in week 1. And so it was like, can you really believe what they're doing at this point? Do you really believe that they're a contender? Can you believe that things have changed? And so coming into that matchup against the Cowboys, I was still like, the Saints got to show me something. I still it can't take it, like you said, off of a game when a team plays Carolina. And so ultimately in the showcase, just how everything looks so different offensively right now for them. The weapon that Rashid Shaheed has become for them as a deep ball threat. Obviously, we know the day that Alvin Kamara had. And so I don't know. They definitely are a team that's, beginning to make you pay attention and looking like a team that could be stepping into that contender category. And if you pay attention to our power rankings that are dropping, you'll see them sitting in that top 5 now.
No, he said he's gonna join back, Ramon, by the way. So, but the point I wanted to add was last year the Saints were last in pre-motion snaps, right? Before the snap, any motion, right? They were last. They're also last in any play action last year. So this year they're number one through 2 weeks. So that just kind of tells you the overhaul of that offense. That tells you the overall of how that offense has switched and switched to that 49ers type game plan that Sean McVay, everybody's kind of going into that 11 personnel. So that kind of tells you right now with those changes of going pre-snap motion to now being last in that to being number one, you can tell that this offense is cooking now. And so, I mean, I hate to say it. I hate to,
Oh,
like
Two,
I
two,
told him, but they look well. They look good. We'll see how
two,
things continue.
two things right quick. I don't know how right quickly you still found a way to throw your Rams in there with the Sean McVay reference. Like you're gonna always do that. And I have never seen the first time in podcast history that somebody that got so excited that they didn't dropped off the podcast after making a point about their team.
That's a mic drop for real.
Right.
yo, yo, look, to go into Dallas and do what we did. I mean, I'm at a loss for words. I'm truly happy. It's something I've been calling for on the podcast for a long time. To go and beat the Cowboys 44-19 at their house. I mean, that was a big win. I'm convinced. When we beat the Panthers, I'm a realist. I was like, okay, the Panthers suck, right? We'll get to that in a moment about the Bryce benching, but it's amazing. I'm not gonna waste much time. Y'all got to get to y'all contenders, but I'm willing to say we got the Eagles next week, which I'm way more confident about after last night, which we might touch on after their loss last night. I think that we could do it. We got the Falcons and then the Chiefs. I mean, if we run the table and it is able to win those 3 straight games, I mean, I'm telling you, I'm winning Saints give for the rest of the podcast season for the NFL.
Yeah, I'll start with my contender. Let's move on from that Saints. I think we spent enough time on that.
It kills him to talk about my Saints in a good way.
We spent enough time. But my contender, I got to go with the Texans. I think the Texans right now, you look at that division, it's probably one of the weakest divisions in football with the Colts in there.
Hey, hey,
Oh my.
hey,
No, but you look at all the other teams in there being 0-2, right? And the Texans being the only 2-0 team in there, or the only team with a win. And what they've done through 2 weeks, I'm just impressed. And I think we were expecting them to be good anyway. They beat the Colts week 1 and they beat a good Bears team that had a week 1 win week 2. So I'm excited to see how they continue to play and how they continue to exceed. So I got them as a true contender and a playoff team.
Yeah, you kind of stole my contender there with the Houston Texans. They were a team that obviously I'm looking at as well too. Obviously we talked about C.J. Stroud, what he represents, but we know D'Amico Ryan's on that other side of the ball, and what they're going to continue to do defensively. Other than that, man, you have your usual suspects from a contender standpoint. I would say a team that has, somewhat surprised me, with their 2-0 start has been the Buffalo Bills. I expected the Buffalo Bills to honestly take a step back this season, and to see in which the way that they were pretty relatively dominant in that performance against Miami on that Thursday night game. And obviously, I mean, you could take the Cardinals win for what it is, but a team that's 1-1. But they are a team that's I'm still figuring out whether I got them as true contender, but they're more on that cusp of contender than I really thought they were going to be coming into this season. And that's without me saying the usual suspects that we already know are, in the Chiefs and things of that sort. Like we know that's a contender. So
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, people had questions centered around what was going to happen after Stephon Diggs left there. Who was going to be the guy to step up? And it looks like Josh Allen has been the guy that stepped up as well as Cook. Cook has
James
been
Cook as
playing.
well as yeah.
James Cook has been playing phenomenal. But yeah, so real quick, guys, we got to move on to waivers, obviously. But 0-2 team to make the playoffs right now, and not all right, whatever. 0-2 team to make the playoffs.
I'll say the Bengals, right? I think the Bengals had a rough go. I think Bengals have I think they're a team that played some tough games and played those teams tough and close, right? Obviously, we know how that Chiefs game ended. And so when I look at them, I look at, their top receiver missing most of camp with his contract issues and Jamar Chase. Then you got T. Higgins over there, another guy that, has not played yet this year. They are a team that I feel like are going to shake back. And then they have a get right game this week when you got the Commanders coming up on Monday night, a team that's defense have looked like just like a JV team out there. So this is a perfect get right game for them. I think they come out, go 1-2. I think they get it together. We obviously seen Jamar Chase, the viral clip of Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow going back and forth and going at it with each other. I think they're too competitive. They're too good. They were right on the cups of beating the Chiefs this weekend. I think that they get it right, and I think they make the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I mean, just echoing that as well too, like you were mentioning, even the upcoming schedule, they definitely have one of the easiest schedules in the league, and so you definitely look at a team that's positioned to make a run. The other team that I would say would to me be the Baltimore Ravens. We saw them in Week 1 be basically a toe away from taking that game into overtime against the defending champs. Obviously, it was a really disappointing game against the Raiders. Did not expect them to come out and drop that game. But I think that you still look at a team that they did lose some things, obviously, from a personnel standpoint. But anytime you have that guy in Lamar Jackson there, I think that he is a guy that can still will you to a playoff run. You still have Derrick Henry back there, even though I don't know if he's being utilized, honestly, the best right now within that offensive scheme and system. But you still have surrounding weapons. We saw what Likely was able to do Week 1. We know that Mark Andrews is working his way back into shape. We know what, Zay Flowers and those guys represent. So if there's another team besides the Bengals, I think that, the Ravens are another team that can get a run at it.
I'm gonna go Jacksonville here. I think Jacksonville has been pretty good for the last 2 years, and as we know, Trevor Lawrence went down uh, at some point during last season. I think he's still getting his timing back together. I think he's still getting his feet under him. But when you look at the core, their talent is still there. Their defense is pretty solid. Brian Thomas looks like he's ready today to contribute in a significant way for them, along with Christian Kirk. I know Ingram is being banged up right now. However, I feel as though they can overcome that injury, and he'll be back at some point this season. So I think that once Trevor Lawrence get his feet under him, I think that team can run the table, can be one of those run the table. Still very, very early in this season. So as we shift to talk from realistic football, since we're switching to our passion, which is fantasy football. As we know, waiver wire pickups are tomorrow. Obviously, when you hear this, the time have probably already passed, but it's still interesting to talk about. Who are some guys that you think, based on roster, obviously, that should be picked up?
Oh, my bad. I'll mute there. No, the Marcus Robinson, obviously you see what's going on with the Rams and they lost their two guys over there. So he's a guy I'm looking at. I'm also what I would like to say is I'm avoiding this guy and I'm probably gonna catch flack on this next week and it look totally crazy, but I'm avoiding Carson Steele in a lot of my leagues, and this is why. I think he is set to lead that backfield in carries, but so many unanswered questions can happen in between now and then. I know the Chiefs were talking about picking up another running back. I know Clyde Hilaire is still there, right? They have so many unanswered questions. I think somebody's going to spend a lot on this guy, thinking they're going to get an RB1. And I don't know if I want to get into that bidding war, for those that play fab and not waivers, you know what I mean? I don't even know if I want to use a number one waiver on that, not knowing what the outlook is going to be like. Now, if I was deeper in the waivers, somewhere around 5, 6, sure, whatever. I'm gonna take a flyer. I'm not wasting that number one waiver on it. But Carson Steele, somebody, the Chiefs, obviously we know what happened with Pacheco going down with the fibula injury out for 6 to 8 weeks. He's a guy that I'm considering, but I'm not using the number one waiver on, and I'm not blowing all my fab on Carson Steele. But my number one guy I'm looking at is Demarcus Robinson. Somebody got to catch some passes over there. And it's obviously Tyler Johnson over there, or Jordan Winnington over there. I think Stafford is the kingmaker of receivers. He can make guys out of nothing. Somebody's gonna have to be his guy and step up over these next month or so. So I'm just kind of making my bids on those guys and see what happens.
Yeah, I would jump in and say if this guy is still sitting out there, I know that some may have kind of grabbed him after week one and saw a little bit of promise, but if Quentin Johnson is still sitting out there on your waiver wire, for the Chargers, I think that he's definitely somebody to pick up. He still always has, obviously, his quarterback over there, Justin Herbert, that we know is still a prolific passer in the league, even though that offense is kind of skewed to a little bit more of a heavier rushing attack. But I still think that, you're looking for a wide receiver one within that offense. It's not like anybody has firmly cemented themselves. So if he finds himself, if he's out there on your waivers, he would be somebody to target. And I think that one more name that I would mention as well, too, if he's out there on your waivers, is Jawan Jennings right now. Just because obviously we know that San Francisco is kind of banged up at this point. We know that Debo Samuel is about to miss some time, obviously already in the rushing and passing game and what Christian McCaffrey has vacated over there. And so obviously you have Brandon Ayuk, you still have George Kittle, but I think that, looking for a potential wide receiver two, wide receiver three, in that offense, not saying for your team right now, but in that particular offense, is a guy that might be a plug and play flex type of guy for you in these upcoming weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think, speaking to the guys that lost Tua, and Tua it was purported that he's on IR. I know y'all gonna say it's a homer pick, but it's legit. Derek Carr, he's thrown, like I said, mentioned earlier, he's leading the league in touchdown passes so far. This is looking like a pass happy team. Hey man, pick your face up. Pick your face up. No, but seriously though, I think it is sustainable in this within this offense. Derek Carr looks comfortable in this offense. So I mean, I think he's somebody that could potentially help you out if you're waiting on Tua to get back if you took him. But my number one guy that I would think if you need running back help would be Samaje P. Ryan. For a lot of the reasons that Carlos mentioned about Carson, I do think that Carson will help with the early down back. But if you're in a PPR league, obviously Samaje P. Ryan, it by far has been a great pass catching back. He's a veteran. He's probably more trusted. Carson had a fumble this past game. Where's the trust level with them? So how about the veteran running back? I think that he could be a long term solution for you. With especially with Pacheco going down, and it's reported that Pacheco be out 6 to 8 weeks. So in an offense with Patrick Mahomes, which they probably will be relying on his arm a little more with Pacheco out, I want some IGP Ryan on my team. I think that's sustainable.
Quick little note as well too. Lowe's kind of beat me to it actually in our league. But what are y'all thoughts about Kareem Hunt's potential?
I think he washed.
I like his potential. I mean, for a flyer for free, you know what I mean? Where I got him, where I got him before, obviously he got locked into a team and hit waivers, you know. He's somebody that if I'm looking at $100 fab, I'm throwing a few bucks at it, and seeing what happens, because again, so much can happen. It's a long season. We got to realize this is week two, and like so much can happen in between now and then. It wouldn't surprise me if Kareem Hunt comes in, steps in, and eventually take over that role in a week or two. You know what I mean? That's just because he's just genuinely better than Carson Steele was an undrafted running back who played some fullback. So it wouldn't surprise me if he stepped in. So he's a guy I'm taking flyers on. I don't think he's washed. I think anybody can, as long as they can run north and right and have some ability, can do well in that Chiefs offense.
Shoot, Clyde couldn't.
Clyde, man, Clyde. Now that's respectfully, that's washed.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think it's a reason why no team touched Kareem. Kareem visited multiple teams before. I could be wrong, but he's visited multiple teams and nobody really signed him. I think he even visited the Saints, and we didn't sign him. So multiple teams. So it does kind of concern me that he wasn't on a roster coming into this season. So I mean, I don't know who could be, but like you said, you get him for free. Why not take a shot at him if you have the bench room to stash him? Another guy I really, really like too, as a sneaky pick, is also Hunter Henry. He was a big focus of the big part of the Patriots offense this past week. Maybe that continues. If you need some help at tight end, maybe he's the guy that you need to spend some time on. But other than that, I mean, if y'all do you have any other waiver picks or anything All right, cool. I did want to touch on Bryce Young and his situation. It was announced that he is finally being benched. Um, after an 0-2 start, my Saints bludgeoned them up week one, and then they lost again. Oh yeah, I'm on the Saints train. Y'all might as well get used to it. But quick thoughts. We run out of time, but quick thoughts on that. Was it the right choice?
I mean, I- one of my thoughts on the whole situation is nobody can succeed in that Panthers offense. And I think I feel bad for Bryce Young. I look at situations where you had somebody like Baker Mayfield who was just there in Carolina. They had him lined up on defense, rushing the passer because again, he couldn't succeed there. How many quarterbacks has actually came there and succeeded in the last 5, 10 years? Not many, outside of Cam Newton, you know what I mean? So I look at their situation. Bryce Young is on his second offensive coordinator. You look at his number one running backs in Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders, two okay running backs, maybe a number two running backs on a normal team. You look at Deontay Johnson, which I know is your guy, but again, I wouldn't look at him as no alpha receiver. He is again another number two guy. Adam Thielen, again, another number two guy. You look at that situation, and I know they try to plug and play that offensive line, but that still needs work. I just don't think he's in a good environment to succeed. And then we see it time after time. These quarterbacks finally leave and get into an environment to succeed, like a Sam Darnold. Now we see with the Vikings, like a Baker Mayfield, where these guys actually get some talent around them, get a system around them, and somebody that believes in them, and then things take off. Even look at it like CJ Stroud. He came into a much better situation, and then they built off that on year two. So when you look at those situations, I don't think that they prepared and laid the foundation for Bryce Young to be successful. So I'm still a believer in him. I understand the decision because he has not been playing well. I'm not saying he has been playing great. I'm not making an excuse for him, but again, I would not mind taking a fly on that guy and sitting him behind a vet for a year or two because we've seen the talent in college. He has the talent there, and just seeing kind of what happens.
Yeah, I think that you said, a lot and said a good bit of what I was going to mention. But, honestly, as it pertains to Bryce Young, you even look at the trade that was made to get him. You trade away what would have been the best weapon for him in DJ Moore. What type of team, what type of franchise says, you know what, I'm about to trade up to get a franchise quarterback. And the first thing I'm going to do in order to go get him, I'm going to go ahead and sacrifice the best weapon that he could potentially have. So as you mentioned, he hasn't had anything around him. He doesn't have a good offensive line over there. You see play after play. I mean, the guy is, fighting for his life out there. And so, now to answer your question of if it was the right move and things of that sort, not going to belabor the point. We've talked about it before. Honestly, CJ Stroud was still the guy that should have been number one. I do think that CJ would have had some struggles over there in Carolina, but I don't think that it would be to the magnitude of what Bryce Young is experiencing. I just think CJ Stroud is a better quarterback and have felt that since they were both in college together. But in order to answer your question as well, too, I think that they have pulled the plug too quickly. You don't invest all of that into a quarterback. You don't invest all of that, give up that many assets to then sit a guy within his second year, the first couple of games within his second year. You got to try to ride it out a little bit more. You got to give him a little bit more time. That situation is just terrible over there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, y'all didn't leave much meat on the bone because I agree with everything you guys said. I'll just add on a little bit more. I think from my perspective, I think it is the right move to protect him, to protect his confidence, and to protect what's salvage of his ability. He was a number one pick. We know that there's juice, but to your point, he never was set up for success from day one. It was the worst situation that you ever could see. And I know y'all guys have mentioned it and joked on it. I am the old guy on his lawn. I do believe that most quarterbacks are being rushed into situations and aren't on a development plan. Tom Brady spoke about it. And I think that that's what happened with Bryce. And then I don't think it helps when you see a CJ Stroud just out the gate, just kill it. But when you look at some of the best quarterbacks in the league, Mahomes set for a year or two. Lamar Jackson should set for a year or two. And these guys have won multiple MVPs of the league. I think that Bryce was rushed a little bit. I think that he lacks a lot in size, and I think it would take a lot for him. But the worst thing you can do for a quarterback, and we've seen it time and time again, we've seen it with Sam Darnold, we've seen it with Baker at times, we've seen it with Jameis. Once you take a quarterback's confidence, you have nothing. And when I see Bryce out there, the reason why I say they make the right move, I see a guy that doesn't have confidence, and he's going to end up either hurt or he's never going to make it back out. I think you shut it down now and he has the rest of the year to learn behind a veteran like Andy Dalton. And to my liking, like you mentioned, Los, for Deontay Johnson, I feel like that raises his fantasy stock a little bit. So I'm kind of happy about that as well. But shout out to Bryce. I like the guy. I wish him all the best. I hope that I know he will get another shot. Do you guys think that he'll get another shot, or do you think that this is the end?
He'll get another shot.
Yep, I agree with that. Well, guys, I think we did it again. I appreciate, as I always say, we appreciate all the love and support. Make sure that you are subscribed to our podcast wherever you like to listen to your podcast at. Also, subscribe to our YouTube. That's where you can find our episodes and content as well. And like I said, we appreciate everybody that listens to it. There's hundreds and hundreds of great podcasts out there, and you chose to listen to us, and we appreciate that. Until next time, we are out of here.
Later.